When it comes to what's left in the field of Democratic candidates, plus a president, I must say I do have some concerns. On Inauguration Day, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden will both be pushing 80. Donald Trump is reelected. He'll be 74. We still don't have a whole lot of information about the heart attack that knocked Sanders off the campaign trail a couple of months ago. And as for the other two, listen, I am no doctor, but I do have eyes and I do have ears.
They sacrifice every day for the furniture and future of their children.
The diversity lottery program, diversity and diversity.
God bless the United States.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
Okay, but maybe I'm overreacting. So, should age be a factor when picking a president, or is it just simply a number? Joining me are Jacquelyn James. She's director of the Sloan Research Network on Aging and Work at Boston College. Jackie, it's great to meet you. Thanks for being here. Elizabeth Dugan is an associate professor of gerontology at UMass Boston and a member of the Governor's Council on Aging. Elizabeth, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here. So, as you both know, probably better than I, Trump was the oldest president to be sworn in to a first term at 70. If Biden or Sanders win, they'll be roughly a decade older. As I said, starting with you, Jack, what kind of red flags should we be looking for, potential red flags, with a 79 or 78-year-old guy taking over arguably the toughest job on the planet?
Well, I think that red flags are probably there, but I think red flags are often overstated. There's a lot of negativity about aging, a lot of misperceptions, and I think that age itself should not be the thing that we think about most, but think about other qualities that make a difference in how somebody takes a leadership role.
When you saw that video, did that cause you any concern, or at least raise some flags for you?
Yes, but not so much about age.
But?
Other characteristics. Inability to speak, remember a story.
But by the way, whether one likes Donald Trump or not, I remember listening to him 10 years ago. I interviewed Joe Biden for an hour 15 years ago. Joe Biden wasn't like that, and Donald Trump, who I didn't interview for an hour, wasn't like that a while ago either. Let me bring you into this, Elizabeth. Jimmy Carter. I interviewed Jimmy Carter when he was 90, who was totally together. But he said, it was either in a book or another interview, that, quote, he wouldn't have felt able to adequately perform the job at 80. And again, this is a guy who's totally with it and together at whatever he is, 93 or 94 or 95. Are there any red flags, or is this just ageism?
Well, we have to be careful, because asking the question can be driven by ageism. Why number would be the flag, but it's looking at the physical and mental function. And so can you imagine the person handling the 3 a.m. call and making a decision quickly and efficiently and handling a crisis? That's sort of a thing to imagine as you're trying to evaluate, are these people safe?
But, you know, part of the problem is we don't get to have physical or psychological or mental evaluations, sadly, of candidates for president anymore, whether they're 45 or 85 years old. I do know, just looking up some statistics you know far better than I today, the Alzheimer's Association says 15 to 20% of people over 65, not 80, have mild cognitive impairment. 17% of people over 75 to 84, some sign of Alzheimer's. So since we don't get to probe as deeply as I'd like to see us probe into every candidate for president, don't we have to have some concerns that are not ageist about people who are pretty old?
Yeah, and if you think of the changes that happen as we get older, our brain, the cognitive speed of processing tends to slow down, but we also manage our emotions better, and we have a well of wisdom and experience that we can draw on. So there are pluses and minuses.
Everything I read today and yesterday said executive function suffers almost across the board. And as a layperson, I can't think of anything that is more important to the leader of the free world than an incredibly high-functioning executive function, no?
Well, it's a job that they don't do alone. So are they the type of person that can assemble a competent team to help them manage the multiple demands of the hardest job on the planet?
Do you not see, I mean, you said you thought there were other things in some of those clips we played. You don't see the creep, let's call it the creep of cognitive decline in any of the three rather advanced age candidates, and I include Trump in that, even though he's 74, two who are almost octogenarians. You don't see any signs of that with your skills?
Well, I know that on average we do see cognitive decline on certain tests, certain kinds of tests that doctors and psychologists administer on average. But there's great individual variability on the extent to which people do and don't decline. As you mentioned, Jimmy Carter is still pretty sharp in his 90s.
But again, questioning himself, that he's saying he couldn't have done it at 80. And these guys want to start the job at 80.
I see your point that there's concern, but I do think over time we have seen that even though there are these declines, people compensate for them. And also that people, even though I've seen in studies those cognitive declines on average do happen as we age, starting at age 45 even, but that in observational studies, people are seen to perform exceptionally well, even well into the 80s and beyond.
But it's an average, but yeah, I understand, and all you can do is talk about an average. You haven't sat down and examined or done an assessment. But we are looking at a class of people. I read a piece in the Washington Post the other day, just a couple of days ago, saying 50% of the time doctors fail to recognize cognitive impairment or dementia. 50% of the time in their patients. We've all heard stories about Ronald Reagan from people like Leslie Stahl when she interviewed him at 73 and said he was barely in the room, even though he's physically there. So I guess what I'm saying, I understand, I think where you're both coming from is we have to be careful not to brand everybody, and I totally respect that. But we also have to be very careful, I think, in an attempt not to brand everybody, to allow individuals who may have impairment to escape scrutiny to the point where they end up leading our country and don't have the skills to do it. Is that not a legitimate consideration, or am I just an ageist dog?
No, I think it is a legitimate consideration, and I do think we should be thinking about it and talking about it. But I have also seen high performance,
of course,
on both of these people that you're talking about, and so I think it's something to be concerned about. I know that doctors...
You're worried about a 78-year-old guy who had a heart attack 4 months ago?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
especially since he hasn't released his
full medical records. So should we? I mean, maybe there's something the three of us can agree about. Can we agree that there should be full testing, and so that it's not discriminating against older candidates of every candidate? Cognitive skills, psychological tests, physical tests. Do we agree that that is a way to circumvent this problem?
I'd love to see it as part of the vetting process, that the candidates, as they advance, not just release their physical health records, but other types of things as well.
Just like tax returns.
Right.
Your
we
medical...
don't get those much these days either.
Right.
Thank you both. It's good to see you. Elizabeth, be well. Jackie, pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.